In the annals of retroactive complaining about the Oscars, few seem as blindingly obvious as the 1983 Best Picture decision, where Gandhi beat E.T., the extraterrestrial. Gandhi was the belle of the ball that night, winning 8 total Oscars and taking many that should have arguably gone to E.T., most notably Best Cinematography and Best Director. When the Oscars had to choose between 2 films that both served as the apotheoses of their respective directors' creative vision, they inevitably succumbed to their pedestrian taste. They went hard for Richard Attenborough's tastefully reverent biopic over Steven Spielberg's magical sci-fi fairy tale, which seems like first-degree murder in 2025. But even back then, it was also seen as obviously wrong. Don't just take my word for it, as Richard Attenborough himself said that he knew E.T. should have won over Gandhi. The signs that the establishment would prefer Gandhi started before the Oscars even occurred, when Attenborough won Best Director at the DGAs. Attenborough was quoted in a Spielberg biography as saying that he was so shocked by this win that he had to be nudged out of his chair. Even though he and Spielberg were on opposite sides of the room, Attenborough made a point to walk all the way over to him to offer his consolations. He got up, I put my arms round him, and I said, "This isn't right, this should be yours," as the two embraced in a hug before walking up to the stage. By all accounts, this was met with a warm reception by ultimate nice guy Spielberg, and some have theorized that this public gesture made Spielberg less upset over having to lose to Attenborough come Oscar night. Even if there was possibly some private resentment, it didn't seem to last, as Spielberg got Attenborough to play John Hammond in Jurassic Park, and that went wonderfully. We all know how momentum can build like a steam engine on the Oscar campaign trail, with prior award wins serving as fuel to the fire, and so it maybe wasn't actually that surprising that Gandhi would be so obviously victorious. Nevertheless, once the years passed and the dust settled, Attenborough had long admitted to himself and others that he knew Gandhi had no business being thought of in the same breath as E.T. despite his film being a passion project that took him decades of his life to make. Attenborough was quoted by the BBC in 2008 as saying that he and a business partner saw E.T. in LA before awards season. His immediate reaction to seeing Spielberg's masterpiece was essentially, "We have no chance. E.T. should and will walk away with it." He'd argued that the only reason his film was perceived as so wonderful was that it was about a wonderful man, and that his film was purely narrative and depended entirely on the story to work. By his logic, E.T. depended entirely on the concept of cinema and succeeded by being the product of the original vision of a genius. Honestly, I don't even have anything smart to add. Attenborough is simply correct in his assessment. It would be churlish to claim that Gandhi is worthy of being forgotten or thrown aside, as it boasts impressive production values and an iconic Ben Kingsley performance. But E.T. is one of those once-in-a-generation miracles that still feels like the first storybook that was ever told to you, bringing you back to the days when you were a small child wrapped up cozy in bed. In looking back on this Oscars result, it reminds me an awful lot of the equally infamous 2011 Oscars, which saw the Best Picture race end in the King's Speech over The Social Network. Once again, an extremely British period piece about an inspiring great man made by a respected journeyman on the rise triumphs over the supreme achievement of one of the most vital auteurs of the modern day. It was met with about as much blowback, and I'm inclined to think people would hold Gandhi in higher regard than the King's Speech if people bothered to watch Gandhi again. The more things change, the more they stay the same, as the Oscars keep trying to convince us that they change even as they often truly don't. As depressing as it is to realize how often the Oscars don't properly award the film that's actually the greatest achievement of a director's career, it means more when the runner-up film is granted the status it always deserved through cultural preservation and the generations of people who intentionally pass it down to the next generation, like it really means something. To paraphrase a recent Best Picture winner, Gandhi was important, but E.T. was actually important.